Welcome back, everyone, to Fantasy Football's finest mock draft series. I'm joined once again by my good friend, Matt Cortina, also our commissioner. How you doing, Matt?
Thanks for mentioning that I'm the commissioner. It's a job that I take very seriously.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a few of us that know you take it very seriously. Some people would abuse the power, but we all know that you're very even, and you only push trades through when they're
When they're
yours.
mine.
Okay, so getting back into it, this will be the fifth installment of our mock draft series. We'll be covering picks 21 through 25, which will encompass the Eagles, two of the Vikings picks, the Patriots, and the Saints, which we'll be covering. So with that being said, the 21st pick, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. And, glaring hole here, they have a pretty good offensive line already. I think they could go running back, but I think in the first round it's a little too high for any of these guys given the trend that we've seen with running backs. So I think they replaced Nelson Aguilar with a guy like T. Higgins. Big, fast target, 6'4". Pair him with a guy like Alshon Jeffrey, who's also 6'3", 6'4". So you have these two big targets. He's a great green zone guy, which is the area between the red zone, between the 20s. I think he's a guy that makes big splash plays, 20, 30-plus yard plays. He really helps out in the run game and helps alleviate some pressure off their tight ends and Alshon Jeffrey. And, Jeffrey has been a little oft injured, so he's a guy that I think you can plug in there. I like his speed. I like his size. I think he's a playmaker for the Eagles going forward.
There's no chance that the Eagles don't take a wide receiver here. It's 100% the Eagles take a wide receiver. And it's interesting now because Judy and CeeDee Lamb are, without a doubt, at least for me, like the best two receivers in the draft, and they're going to go 1-2. After that, it really comes down to what receiver you want in your scheme and what players you already have on the roster. Now, the Eagles, as you mentioned, Alshon Jeffrey has lingering injury issues, has had it his whole career. And then who else after that? JJ Arcega-Whiteside? Nobody.
Yeah.
I agree they're going to go wide receiver. I think they're going to go Justin Jefferson here, which is what a lot of people have.
He's pretty much been tied to them.
I don't think that Justin Jefferson is the next best wide receiver. I think he complements Alshon Jeffrey. He reminds me a lot of Steve Smith of the Giants.
Yeah.
And when you watch him play, I remember in the college football playoff last year, whenever LSU was on and I decided to subject myself to SEC football, he stood out. He's a really good route runner. He creates separation. The issue that I have with him is that if you really start to look at all of the tape of Justin Jefferson, he has a little bit of the dropsies. Now, can that be worked out in the pros with I don't know, maybe if he's in the right system. But you have a guy like Joe Burrow, and regardless of how you feel like he's going to be in the future in the pros, he had a historic season last year, and every ball he threw was right on the money. And if you're still not catching everything that's coming your way, there are some concerns there. But the ceiling is so high for Jefferson, and because he's a good route runner, he can make an impact right away for a team that's probably in win now mode. So I think they're definitely going to consider T. Higgins, but I think they'll probably lean towards Justin Jefferson in this situation.
Yeah, I love Justin Jefferson. Honestly, he is probably my second favorite receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. Wow. I really like the way that he plays. I thought it was a great comparison to Steve Smith on the Giants. Very serviceable. He's a good in-out runner. He's willing to go over the middle against the linebackers and the strong safeties. He's got a bit of a drop issue, but I think that all depends on drive. If you get him into a good system.
Doug Peterson's a great coach, and you can't necessarily teach hands, but I think he'll figure it out.
Moving on from the Eagles, we have the Vikings at number 22. Matt, where do you think they go here?
Well, so here I think they go T. Higgins. Um, I don't think that T. Higgins is necessarily the third or fourth best receiver in this draft class. The guy who I think is top one or two, maybe under the radar, will come in a little bit. But T. Higgins has big size, and I think that in a Gary Kubiak offense, where he kind of depends on somebody to play that role, and you have Adam Thielen, I think T. Higgins is probably the choice. I think maybe there might be some thought to replacing Stephon Diggs with a 1-for-1 similar player. But Kubiak won a Super Bowl with Demaryius Thomas, and I think that he will want to replace the hole that Diggs left with a guy that's more similar to that.
I agree. I think the Vikings go wide receiver here. I think losing Stephon Diggs it's pretty rough for them, and you have to fill that hole immediately. Our picks are actually swapped. I have them taking Justin Jefferson here, and I think when you look at all these Gary Kubiak offenses, really it's Mike Shanahan. So we're going back to the Broncos in like the late '90s. Adam Thielen is, if you want to call, the possession guy, and you need a guy
Ed
that's
McCaffrey of the
exactly. And I was actually going to bring that up. So you got the Ed McCaffrey. You need a Rod Smith. So Go get yourself a Rod Smith, and I believe that's in Justin Jefferson, which I actually think is a pretty good comparison for that receiver as well. I think we both talked about him enough over the last two picks, having them swapped. I really like him. I think he's great to pair with Adam Thielen. And also Thielen, over the last couple of years, he's missed a couple games. So I think having a guy who can step in there into the number one role would be perfect for the Vikings as well. Moving on, we have everyone's favorite team, the New England Patriots. Brady's not there. They said they're going with Stidham. I believe Bill Belichick. And in free agency, they lost both Jamie Collins and Kyle Van Noy, which hurts. I mean, those are, Van Noy more than Collins, but those are two pretty talented linebackers. So I have them replacing them with a linebacker immediately. I like Kenneth Murray. I know you have him going a little bit higher, but I think that's a perfect fit for them. They get a guy sideline to sideline, plays the run, plays the pass well. In previous video, I compared him to a modern-day Patrick Willis. He doesn't have the same size as Patrick, but he'll stuff the line. He'll cover the tight ends, and he could definitely keep up with the running backs out of the backfield, which you definitely need to do nowadays. Where do you think they go, Matt?
I think Bill Belichick has a relationship with Kirk Ferentz. You had this guy going to the Falcons, I think 7 or 8 picks earlier, but I think that AJ Epinesa, he's super long. And he's also really powerful. He's got a ton of moves, and as we mentioned before, he went up against the best of the best in the Big Ten along the offensive line. I think some of the concerns about him are that he doesn't have like the burst of a prototypical, pass rusher or D lineman. But when can you think of maybe Jamie Collins? But when can you think of a Patriots defensive lineman who had that? They fit guys for the system, and that AJ Epinesa is a perfect fit for the system if he makes it that far.
Yeah, I was actually really struggling with that pick. I kind of really wanted the Falcons to take him, but if the Falcons didn't, I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Patriots. I think Bill Belichick loves his versatility. When you look at guys, even in most recent years, like Trey Flowers, he was that type of guy. He didn't have a strong burst off the edge. He's not running a 4.5 40 coming off the edge. He's a 4.8, 4.9, 5.0 type of guy, but he's strong. He can set the edge in the run game, which is really important in a 4-3 scheme. And having a guy like Epinesa there, I think would be perfect for Bill Belichick. And kind of like I alluded to with the Falcons pick, in passing situations, you move him to the inside, and he's rushing the passer, especially in the AFC East where interior line play is pretty porous there with the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins. So I think that's a really good pick for them. Moving on from the Patriots with the 24th pick, we have the New Orleans Saints, and thank God that we no longer have pass interference review, thanks to them. Matt, who do you like the Saints picking right here?
The Saints, if the draft falls the way that I think it might, at least upon this initial review, have two intriguing options. They can go Patrick Queen, which fills a position of need for them. I think it's almost too perfect, him coming from LSU, going to New Orleans. And I think that even though they gave Michael Thomas that big fat paycheck, and even though they have Alvin Kamara, who obviously can catch 100 balls in a year, they need somebody outside of Traquan. Traquan Smith is a third wide receiver. So I think that they probably go wide receiver here, knowing that Drew Brees is at the very tail end of his career, and you start to see some signs of decline in his play last year. So you need guys that can get open, and what we know from the Saints is that they gravitate towards playmakers and flashy and quick guys, and that's why I think they might take Jalen Reagor at this pick. He can kind of do it all. He can return punts. He's a joystick on the field. He's just another headache for teams to deal with, and because of his ability, he can contribute definitely to a team that is certainly in win now mode right now. So I think that they might give consideration to Brandon Ayuk because he's sort of a similar player, but Reagor is the faster, shiftier player, and I can see them going with him there.
Yeah, Reagor reminds me a lot of Brandon Cooks as far as like the way that he plays the receiver position, which people forget. I mean, he's been on 4 teams now in the last 5 years, but Brandon Cooks was originally a first-round draft pick for the New Orleans Saints, first or second round, whatever it was. But they need that guy. I mean, who's their downfield threat right now? Ted Ginn, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, look, Ted Ginn has done really well for the New Orleans Saints, but I like them taking a receiver here because, look, you can throw Michael Thomas the ball 150 times in a season, but that you can't do that every year. Like that is a one-off. I mean, him catching that many balls this year. Marvin Harrison's record stood for 12 years, maybe even longer, 15 years almost. I think it was 2004 or 2003 that Marvin Harrison originally set that reception record for. But you need someone outside of that. So I really like taking a wide receiver here for them. For the Saints, I have them taking Zach Bond at linebacker, who I think gives them some versatility. You have Demario Davis, who's a really good run defender, decent in the pass game. You'll also have Alec Anzalone, who's more so suited for passing situations. But Zach Bond, he's very versatile. He could play inside. He could also rush the passer pretty well on the edge, even though the Saints run a 4-3. But I think he gives them some added versatility at the linebacker position, which they really have been lacking over the last season.
Yeah. No, I think Bond would be a good pick. You know, the games that they lost last year are games where they scored 10 points, right? And so the thought then would be, so we need to add another playmaker. Can that playmaker contribute in year one? Can that playmaker distract enough from the playmakers that are already on that team to make an impact? I think Reagor could do it if Ruggs falls. I think that'd be really intriguing for the Saints.
If Ruggs is there, they probably jump on that.
Yeah. But you're right. They do need a pass rush. They do need to improve their pass rush.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on from the Saints with the 25th pick, actually their second pick within 4 will be the Minnesota Vikings, and I have them taking I mean, their secondary is in shambles right now. Both Mackenzie Alexander and Xavier Rhodes, despite the bad season that he had last year, they're both out of town. So they fill a need with Stephon Diggs' cousins, Trayvon Diggs out of Alabama. I think you get look. Mike Zimmer is he's a secondary guy. I mean, he came into the league as a secondary coach, defensive coordinator, and so I think he wants a guy in there who can play man to man. He's a willing tackler and he's got good ball skills. He's a big body guy. He's 6 foot. He's got good speed, good range, and everything like that. So he can be that Xavier Rhodes model player for him. I like the Vikings taking Diggs here with their second pick in the first round.
I think there is no chance that the Vikings take a player who is neighbors, friends, brother, cousin to Stephon Diggs. Are you kidding me? They're staying so far away from Stephon Diggs because even if they have a loose relationship, they still have a relationship. And Stephon Diggs was unhappy the entire, like all of the last 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. There's no chance that they're going to go through that rigmarole again. That said, they definitely need help at corner. I mean, they lost Trey Waynes to
Trey Waynes as well. Yeah.
So their top 3 corners are gone. For so long, you were wondering when the Vikings were going to buckle to their salary cap pressure, and it was this year.
Now,
and I think, not just saying this as a Packer fan, I think Green Bay is going to run away with the division because Chicago is down. Detroit might compete. Detroit competed a lot last year, and they might be a lot better. But the Vikings just lost so much talent that I don't see how they compete. They can start the rebuilding process with a corner to fill like their most glaring area of need. There's some thought that they might bring on an offensive lineman. But if they don't get one of those top guys, they're not going to dip into that pool. They'll probably save that for later. The guy I think they're going to take is Jeff Gladney, the cornerback from TCU. Only because, not necessarily because he's better than the other corners that we've mentioned that have gone earlier, but because I think he's a Mike Zimmer kind of player. He's super physical. He's so tenacious in man-to-man defense. He can press receivers at the line. And I think that's the kind of guy that Zimmer relies on his defense.
I like that. And, there's that old adage that says you use the run to set up the pass or you use the pass to set up the run in the West Coast offense. But the Vikings defensive line is going to suffer with the lack of secondary play that they'll have this year if they don't grab some talent in the secondary. They also lost Andrew Sendejo at safety, who, he's a very smart player. The Browns got him. I love the fact that they got him, but they need a corner here bad. They could go safety, but I think the more pressing need, at least in the first round, is you need to get a guy who can cover, especially in that division. I mean, the Lions have both Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones. The Packers obviously have Devontae Adams, and if Chicago had
and a wide receiver probably in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like if Chicago had a quarterback, I'd throw Allen Robinson into this mix. But who knows? In that division, you need a solid number 1 corner. I think that's more of a pressing need for the Vikings here at 25. So much like with the Raiders, you go offense and defense in the first round with your 2 picks.
They also, I think he's a free agent now, but they also might lose Everson Griffin. Mm-hmm. And so you lose Sendejo, Griffin, and your top 3 corners. And that defense, what is their identity now?
So Linval Joseph left down too. So where's your good run stuffing defensive tackle? That could be an area of need. So I think at this point in the first round, you really have to kind of weigh your options of, do I want the 3rd, 4th, or 5th best defensive tackle, or do I want the 4th or 5th best corner? They could just go either way here. I think they take the best available defensive player regardless.
Yeah, and they may, because they drafted Irv Smith at tight end last year, and because Kubiak runs his offense through the running game, they may flip these picks and take a corner, the best available corner with their first pick,
Hmm.
instead of a wide receiver, because the wide receiver, with the Saints are likely may take one, but the Patriots won't. So they may decide to take a corner there with their first pick.
Yeah. I mean, the Vikings have a lot of holes, so I don't see them taking these two and parlaying them into a higher pick. They could honestly take one of these two picks, trade down, acquire some more capital, so they can rebuild that empty defense. Um, so we'll see what happens, but that's going to round up part 5 in our mock draft series. Matt, I would like to thank you again for being here. Once
My
again,
pleasure.
that's the commish. This is Fantasy Football's Finest, and hope to see you next time. Thanks again, Matt.
See ya.